Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. So today we have a
Hey
very
guys.
special guest. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Neriah and I'm a singer-songwriter. And yeah, I've been writing since I was 5. I just released a 24-track album and working on a lot of new music, so I'm very excited.
Wow, 24 tracks. That's really exciting.
It was wild. I went through a very bad breakup, guys, and I was like, 24 songs about this one guy. Like,
Oh my God.
As you should.
So can you, yeah, seriously, can you kind of go back to like your childhood?
Mhm,
When did you kind of know that you actually like could sing? Did somebody tell
mhm,
you? Did you discover it yourself? Or like how old
mhm.
were you when all that happened?
So I've loved singing my whole life. My parents literally say that I started singing before I started talking. And my dad's mom was actually an opera singer and a piano player, and she lived in Mississippi. So we would go visit sometimes, and they said I was obsessed with like jumping on the bed, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Wizard of Oz. Like
Oh,
that was my movie. So really since I was little, and then my parents got divorced when I was 5, and my dad had painted me this picture. He's an amazing artist. He painted me this picture of like me and my sister with like these rainbows and this little wishing well. And years later, I found out, but I wrote a song, my first song ever when I was 5, and it was called The Wishing Well, and it was about this picture. So singing's really been part of my life forever. I mean, I was a theater kid growing up. I did plays. I did, I'm writing my whole life just like as therapy. And then I think my parents, I feel like every parent thinks that their kid can sing for a little bit. My dad was like, I don't know. And then there was one moment where I think my dad was just like, okay, yeah, you can sing. Like we're gonna try to do this. So then I started actually just doing it more as I got older professionally. And yeah, now I feel like writing for other people and releasing for a few years now.
that's so exciting. So were your parents always very supportive then of you?
Yeah, my parents, it was definitely very interesting. So my dad's a doctor, and my mom was in the entertainment industry, but more on the hosting side. So I think for my mom, it was a little easier, because just being in the entertainment industry and understanding what that's like. And my parents both came from nothing and worked very hard to get to where they were. So they were always like, you need to work hard, you need to do all this stuff. And my dad being a doctor, he was like, you need a backup plan, like just growing up and hearing everyone tell him like the music industry is the scariest place to be for your kids, and all of this stuff. So my dad really instilled the work ethic into me and was like, if you go to college and you graduate and you get a degree and you get straight A's, like that will, you can do music. So I did that. I went and got a business degree, graduated a year early, got straight A's, which was the best thing ever because I studied marketing. So I really learned how to market myself. And it just taught me how to simultaneously do two things and be able to work hard and also, pursue my dreams. So after that, he was definitely very supportive. I think the music industry for parents is so scary, and especially living in LA and growing up here. But I think, at the end of the day, like once I showed them that I could work hard enough, then they were fully supportive, and I couldn't be more grateful for them now. Like they're so supportive. They're the best.
Love that. And when you were done school, like what did you immediately do after to like start working in the music industry?
Yeah, so when I went to school, like right as I was graduating high school, that was my first time I was really like working in professional studios, and I was kind of getting like my first dose of what the music industry was like, working with people, going to studios, starting to write songs professionally. And I was like, I can't leave LA, like I have to stay here. So I ended up staying here. And while I was actually in school, I would literally, and since I graduated a year early, I had to take like an absurd amount of classes, like all summer. So I would go to my classes, I would come back, I would go to the studio, or I would write and I would come back. So I feel like I didn't really have the real college experience, like even going out and like partying and all of that. Like, yes, I had fun, but I was working so hard while I was in college where I feel like when I got out, because COVID hit like when I was in college. So a lot of it was online. So the last 2 years ended up completely being online. So I had just built like a little studio in my room. Like I got a microphone, I got speakers, and I downloaded Logic on my computer. And every single day I would do my tests, I would do my homework, and then I would write a song. And I would do that. And I would kind of just do both. So when it ended, when school was over, I was like, okay, now I can do this full on So after school ended, I actually started doing this writing program that was a 9-month long like writing program where I would write a bunch for other artists. It was like a writing camp with Stargate, and it was great. Like I wrote so many songs, I got a lot of experience. And then during that time, I was doing that like from 12 to 6, and then from 6 to like 1 in the morning, I would go work on my project with studios. So I definitely am a workaholic. Like I love to work and I'm constantly doing something, but it's been amazing. I think for the first time in my life now, I'm really working on things that I feel like I get to choose what I want to work on, which has been amazing. You know, when I'm working on my stuff or other people's projects, my schedule's a little less crazy, but it's fun. Like I feel like writing every day and in sessions, like I couldn't be happier with what I do. So it never feels like work.
No, that's so good.
Yeah.
Speaking of like writing and being in the studio, like what are some of the things that you need around you, whether it's certain people or
Mhm.
certain, I don't know, objects or just the vibe in general to like
Mhm.
kind of set the scene and
Mhm.
make you or help you write
I
best?
love that question. I'm so funny. Like every single time my producer and like all my writers would tell you the same thing. I'm such a light girl. Like when we go into the studio, I'm like, hey, I need neon lights. Like turn that hospital light off. Like I need it to be neon. I always have a blanket. It'll be like 80 degrees and I'm like curled up like in a blanket and in my sweat. I like to be really comfortable. I feel like when I'm writing for my project, especially, there's a few writers that I absolutely adore that will come in and also help me sometimes. And I think just like creating like a really like honest, open space where we can all just, talk about real life and just things and, things that make us feel the certain ways that we do for everything because it's such a safe space. I feel like when I'm writing, I have to write about things that actually happen. So I think trust is a big thing in there. But definitely like neon lights. I love it just being so dark in the room. Like sometimes when I record my vocals, I like it completely pitch black. And yeah, I love a blanket. Like you'll always see me with like a blanket, probably like some stuffed animal slippers. I love slippers. Love being comfortable.
Love that. And is it always like the same? Do you always work with the same people or like do the writers switch up sometimes?
So I always work with the same producer for everything for the last like 2.5 years, because he's incredible. And I was like, he just completely understands me. And then writing, it really depends. I write the majority of my stuff by myself. But as I've learned, like for my last, like I love doing sad songs. I love doing the ballads, and that's kind of my cup of tea. So for the last project, occasionally like we'll have some sessions that like it's always nice to switch it up. So I'll have another writer come in because I think, three people are always going to be better than two. Just for ideas and stuff. And after I wrote 24 songs about the same ex, I'm like, okay, I need someone else's help. What else can we write? But like for this new album that I'm working on right now, it's very upbeat and like fun. So for that, I'm bringing in some writers to help, who are absolutely incredible. But I think not necessarily always the same people, but I probably, if I'm going to bring a writer for my project, there's probably 4 people that I would bring in that I've met so far. But I'm always open to writing for like to meeting new people. So usually like when I'm writing for other artists, which I do like 4 times a week, they'll sometimes bring like their writer. So like that's always really nice to just like kind of get a little bit of a change of, just like scenery and like the people in the room. But still, even for my co-writes, like me and my producer, we do everything together. So that's really nice. I think just when you're writing music, it's really important to find people that get you. So it's like, if I like something, I'm like, what my sound is. I think that's something that's really important because since I'm not a producer, it's really hard for me to articulate that sometimes. So just being comfy. But I think, changing up the writers, like for my career, I feel like I would get a new writer if I was doing like a new album, that was completely different. I'd be like, okay, who does this sound really well? Like who, what can I learn from? Because I think for me, like I always want to be the worst person in the room because I feel like that's how you learn. And that's how I have learned, so many things. So collaborating it's the best.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said how you write all of your songs and stuff. How long does it usually take you to write like one song?
It is so different. Like Unfinished Business, we wrote in 30 minutes and it just like
Okay.
poured out of us. And it was a second song. I remember it was the second song we wrote that night. And some Like this, some nights we'll write 3 songs, sometimes we'll do 1. And it really just depends. I think that was the fastest I've ever written a song. And I was like, I love this song. We didn't change anything. I was like, this is done. This is ready, because I was so going through it and it just like spilled out of me. And I think I see that happening a lot, like when I'll go to record vocals, or when I'll go to just kind of like, sometimes when we go into a session and, you know, we find the chords that we like, that's kind of my process. And I have a concept, like sometimes we'll just freestyle. And if it works, it works and it's great. Um, and I've always written, like before, I feel like I would never leave a session without a full song, if not 1, if not 2, if not 3. But for this new project, it's been very different because we've been slowing it down a lot. Like we have been spending weeks on just the verse, and I'll write it and we'll leave and kind of give it space. Then I'll come back and listen to it. And like some of the songs that we've written that are definitely going to be on this next album, we haven't even put lyrics to. We've just done melodies. So, which has been really cool and interesting, and tried to, you know, see it. But I think it's so crazy like how songs come about. Like you walk into this room with someone that you may have never met before, and then you leave and it's like, oh wow, here's everything about my life.
Dude, yeah,
So
that's so crazy.
yeah,
Like
it
that's
just
an
really depends.
insane. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, yeah, it just depends. Like it just depends on the day, on the people, like everything.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's an insane amount of trust. Because like you're
Hmm.
putting yourself in such a vulnerable position to share your own personal experiences. I know you said that this album is mostly about your past relationship, but
Hmm.
are there anything or is there anything else that like inspires you to write?
Yeah, my whole life, I mean, definitely relationships have been a huge part. I think my parents have been divorced a bunch of times. Like that was something growing up. Like I think it was like 4 or 5 times. Like that was just a big part of my life. And I'm such a relationship girl. And I think that's a big part of who I am. So I think that's why I'm able to find just a lot of inspiration through that. I think family stuff, and it's always been easier for me to write about the sad stuff that's going on, because a lot of times I'll write in my journal and I'll take the journal to the session and I'll flip through while we're writing, and you know that's where a lot of the lyrics will come. But it's crazy, like this next project is like love songs. It's like Happy Neriah, which I've never really done, which is
Mhm.
so fun. um but yeah, I think it just life, you know. My best friend, who's been my best friend since I was 13, bless her heart, like she's the best person I've ever met. She's amazing. But we'll have like, you know, I'm sure you guys too, it's like I'll have FaceTimes with her if she's having a boy problem or I'm having a problem, and we're on FaceTime for 3 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great song title, let me write that down. And like
Mhm.
I'll text her, I'm like, what do I write about? So I think it's just life and stories. You know, it could be from a book, it could be from a movie, it could be from a quote, it could be from a friend's experience or something that people are going through. I think that's the best part about music. Like it's just anything that everyone can relate on. And I think that's just the craziest thing. And yeah, the trust in the room was crazy. I think that's why collaborators I like to keep pretty small, because you just never know. Like you'd be surprised. Like I've had some days where like I've never met someone before, and like say I'm writing for another artist and they come and they sit down, like you chit chat for like a little bit, and then it's like, okay, so like what's your life story? And it's like, what's the
Mhm.
worst thing that's happened to you? What's like, and it gets so just so deep so fast, and you know, where people start crying and like we're crying through the song, and it's just such a beautiful process. And then it's like you leave and you have this song and it's like, wow, we just made that. So it's very therapeutic, and it's such a beautiful like just way that songs come about.
I really love that. How do you think that your style or your, I guess, tone has like evolved throughout the years since
Mhm.
like you put out your first single?
Style, I think I've definitely started experimenting a lot more with different sounds and genres, which has been really cool. I think after my first project, like just putting out like different things. I mean, I did some that were a little more, you know, edgier, and some that was very like princess pop, and some that was acoustic. And I think being able to experiment with all of it really helped me find what my writing style was, and also just experiment with like different tones, which has been crazy. Like I think that's something that was like the biggest learning, and still, you know, we learn it every day. But just like the way you record a song on a mic, like there's so many different possibilities. So just being able to
Yeah.
do that, like such a blast. But yeah, I think I'm open to doing anything, which I think has been really fun, like genres, even writing for other people. Like I've written rap songs, I've written R&B, like I've really gone anywhere. So I think just being able to understand that like you can try everything and see what works has helped me definitely like find what I love to do and just experiment with tone. And I also think as you sing more and as you record more, you definitely just you get a little more experience, which definitely helps.
Yeah. And you were talking about at the beginning how like parents like always talk about how like the music industry is like this scary place. Now
Mm-hmm.
being in it, what has your experience been? Because I know like the industry can be like glamorized a lot. So what's your experience with that?
Yeah, of course. I think the industry, it's a very interesting industry for sure. I think a big part of it is, when I first started getting into the industry, I've been independent my whole entire time. And, I think especially for women, like there's definitely a lot of things that I'll get into. But I think the biggest thing for me is there was so many people, just saying you can't do this unless you're signed to a label, or you can't do this unless it's this. And after hearing that so many times, I was like, you know what, like yes I can. And I did. I got on the playlist, like I remember like one of the first meetings, they're like, well, you'll never reach 1 million monthly listeners like if you're not signed with a label. And I was like, months later I was like, well, I just reached 2.4, so that's not true. And getting on playlists. And I think the biggest thing in this industry is like you have to work hard, and I think hard work can outwork absolutely anything. So I think it's like if you have any dream or you want to set your mind to something, you do it. But I think the hardest part about the industry, especially being a woman, that I've experienced, and I know a lot of like friends also have, is there's this constant pressure that you have to change your look up. You have to, every single album, like you have to stay in shape, but you don't want to be too thin, but you don't want to, it's all these things where it's like when you have all these eyes on you, and just staying relevant, I think is something. And I think it could be really hard on your mental health, the whole posting and looking at numbers and all of that stuff. I think that's something that a lot of artists struggle with. But what I've learned is just like you have to, I've just decided, I'm like, I am going to only create and release content and all the stuff that I like, that I think, explains who I am. And you really have to just don't look at the numbers. It doesn't matter. If you're creating stuff that you love, like that's going to be the best showcase of who you are as an artist.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
So I think we should dive into how you got chosen to go on tour with Madison Beer, which is so
yeah,
crazy because we met through her and now we're meeting you
amazing.
through her. So,
That's incredible. Yeah, guys, it was literally the most insane. I was like blown away because I've only been on tour literally once for 3 days. So I was like, this is
mhm.
crazy. But basically, I met Madison and Ryder because I was writing some of for Ryder's project. So I wrote like his first single and a few other ones with him, my producer. And Madison actually came in for one of the sessions, and so I got to meet her. Such a sweetheart. And I guess I think our managers knew each other, and so my manager, like when she announced the tour, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna pitch this," because that's usually how it works. Agents, managers, they all kind of like talk and pitch it. And I was like, okay, like great, like never have high expectations with that stuff because you just never know. And I was in Palm Springs with my boyfriend and his family, and my dad texted me and he was like, I can't wait to see you at the Greek. Like, congratulations. And I was like, huh? I was like, what do you mean? And so then I like checked my text because I guess my manager called my dad and my manager texted me and I didn't see it. And he was like, congrats, like you got the Madison Beer tour. And I was like, what? I was like, are you joking? Like, are you sure? Like, are we positive? And so yeah, it was just insane. And so now I'm so excited, and the fandom, like even her fans, like have been so sweet, and she's such a sweetheart. So I'm just really excited to, it'll be scary, like that's gonna be my first like real tour experience, but
Yeah.
I'm so excited. And Upsall too is also opening up like on the days that I am, and she's incredible. So I could not be happier to share the stage with two amazing women. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and a lot bigger stage now with like a lot more people than before because we went on her last tour, so it's just so crazy seeing her growth too, and now
crazy.
seeing yours. So,
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, the biggest room I've ever played is 600 people. I think the smallest room I'm playing with her is like 4,000.
Yeah.
So, but I'm so excited. I think I'm honestly so excited to hear her set every night too, and just like learn from them, like be able to watch like them and see. But yeah, that's what I've said. I think her life support tour, like the rooms just like got so much bigger this time. So,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think I'm the last leg, which I think there's some of the biggest rooms like in that. So I'm excited. Like it's gonna be so fun.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited as well.
we'll be at the LA show.
Oh my
Hopefully
gosh,
we
amazing.
can meet up because that would be
Yeah.
fun.
No, that would be amazing. Honestly, like after this, like, because I know you guys have probably however we plan this, like if you just message the email of managers or whatever, we can plan something so we can come say hi and stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, you said you did a previous tour that was 3 shows. Was that like just
Mhm.
like your own show? Because I think you came to Montreal.
Yeah, I opened up actually for Alexander Stewart, which was
Okay.
amazing. So I did his LA show, New York, Canada, Toronto, and Montreal. So, but that was like my first tour ever. I've done like little shows here and there and played like little gigs by myself, but that was the first time I had like actually played in front of an audience that was
Mhm.
bigger than like 100 people. So it was a blast. I mean, I love touring. It's one of my favorite things ever, like performing. And I just feel like it brings such a new life to the songs. Like being able to just scream them and explain to people like what it's about is so fun.
Yeah. Do you have like a pre-show ritual that like you have to do before every show?
What do I do before every show? I usually will get like pho. I'm obsessed with noodles. So I'll get noodles sometimes like before. And then I feel like before the show, I'm just like sitting in the green room and I'm like, okay, Neriah, you can do this. Like, we're gonna be fine. Like, let's grab the microphone. And sometimes I'll go on live, but not really. I feel like during this show, I'll probably definitely come up with one. Um, but I don't know. It's yeah, I feel like I need to figure one out. So
No, that's fine. I mean,
Speaking,
okay.
go ahead.
I feel like we're gonna say the same thing, but speaking of noodles,
Okay.
that's what your fandom is
Yeah.
called. And I have a two-part question. So the first one is, how did that come about? And second of all, I mean, following you for a little while now, I know like you do so many live streams. You tried to do a space once, and like you're very connected with like your
Mhm,
fandom that you
mhm.
have now. What has that been like to like have people following you and like making fan pages and all that?
The name first came from I'm obsessed with noodles, like cup of noodles ramen, like have been since I was little, like obsessed. And I honestly it came about because I was just posting noodles all the time, like me eating noodles, making noodles. And one of my fans was like, "Oh my gosh, like why don't we call the fandom noodles?" And I was like, "That's a great idea." And it kind of just stuck and everyone loved it, but the noodle family, it's the most amazing community I've ever been a part of in my whole entire life. I mean, growing up I had a really hard time with like having good friends like that, especially growing up in LA, and just like having a community where you really felt like safe and that you could trust people. And I think that was something really important for me. Like as getting into music, I was like, I have been so blessed with the life that I've been given, and I just there's nothing I love more than making music. And at the end of the day, like, yes, first and foremost, I make it for myself, but I make music to help other people 100%. Like the sweetest messages, and I read all my messages are like, "Hey, you saved my life. This song helped me through this breakup." Like, and I respond because I'm like, I would not be able to do anything without them. So I give so much thanks for them. Like, I'm so grateful. I wouldn't be anywhere where I am. But yeah, we have group chats. They're on everything. I talk to them every day. They're my whole world. So it's amazing. They're incredible.
I love that.
Oh, that's so nice. Have you ever had like some creepy interactions?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they'll definitely be creepy. And I think that's some like I'm so hands-on with everything. Like we have group chats again, and sometimes we'll have to kick someone out because they'll be weird stuff, as they're
Yeah.
always. But I try to monitor it, and there's like the noodle leaders that will tell me like, hey, we got to get them out, and they all run like the HQ account, so they're pretty good at doing that. But yeah, there's definitely been creepy things. I think even at shows, you'll get some like weird stalkers sometimes, and it's just like, hey, we're gonna stay away from this. But at the end of the day, I'm
Yeah.
just like, it happens.
Yeah.
Oh, we know a lot about those stalkers, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Scary.
Do you ever like get stopped on like the street? Like people are like, oh, like I know you.
Sometimes I feel like I mean, when I used to do YouTube a lot more, I feel like it happened a lot more back then. But even now, like it's more like if I'm at like a coffee shop, I feel like, or like some random places it'll be. Like I was in Costco the other day and someone was like, "Are you Neriah?" And I was like, "Oh gosh, why don't recognize me right now? I look homeless." Because that's like such a thing for me. Like I'm either fully glammed up or I'm literally in sweatpants and like woke up rotting in bed all day. So
Mood. Yeah.
Speaking of YouTube, when did you start that channel?
So I started YouTube when I was 13. I started it and I would do vlogs and covers. And then that was the first place I kind of started building a following. And I had a good amount of following. I'd get millions of views. Like everything was going really well. But I got bullied really bad for it in high school. And so the night before I went to college, I was like, you know what? F this. I'm not doing this anymore. So I deleted, not archived, I deleted every video I had ever made, gone, like wiped it off the internet. And I didn't post for years. And there were so many. That's like one of my biggest regrets because I really let what someone else, other people's opinions, like completely dictate that because that was such a fun community where I really started building everyone and like the fandom. They used to be called the fishies and like it was this whole thing. And then, occasionally I'd like post another video, but not posting for so many years, it just kind of like disconnected myself from that whole fandom. And then now I'm like, you know what, guys? It's 2024. I'm back. I love content. I love making it all. Like that's kind of my first love was being able to, make content and edit it and do all these videos. So now I'm back trying to post on YouTube again once a week. It's so hard. So I'm like, once every 2 weeks, I'll be happy. But yeah, I'll never stop again. So that's good.
Yeah, I love that. I have like a similar story because I also do YouTube and in high school, like people found it and they made fun of me and then I just deleted everything and I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then I
Yeah.
started again because I was like, okay, no
Yeah.
more. But you should
Yeah, it's
definitely do like
horrible.
tour like diary type of things
Well,
for
I think what I'm gonna do for a tour, and I think something for me is like I post on everything, which is like I think stresses me out sometimes because I'm like I don't want to post the same thing on anything, so I'm like making
Mhm.
all content. But on tour, I'm gonna do kind of like how people do Vlogmas. I'm gonna do like Tourmas or something, where every single day I'm gonna post vlogs.
That'll
So I'm
be
gonna
fun.
vlog
Yeah.
like every single day, and then I think like even like the shows and stuff, like do lives and a bunch of really fun things because for me, I'm like I feel like there's not a lot of artists that do that. And I'm like, I want to show everyone like what it's really like to, record the vocals, to go on tour. Like, because I feel like there's such this glamour look where it's like, oh, you're an artist. It's like, oh, I will probably bawl my eyes out some nights because I'm so stressed because I didn't get a sound check or because, whatever it is. And I think I love just being honest and real with all of that stuff. So showing people absolutely everything.
And I
Yeah.
think the fans really enjoy that, like getting to see the behind the scenes of everything. I know I
Exactly.
would love to see it because I just am very interested in that aspect.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
definitely think you should do that for sure.
Yeah. No, I definitely will. Like I already know like half of my suitcase is gonna be like Polaroids and like cameras and all this stuff where I'm just gonna
Yeah.
film absolutely everything. So
No.
Have you like started to plan your set list or like what the vibes are gonna be for the summer?
set lists I have definitely started. It's like it's such a weird time for this tour to be for me because I mean, I feel like when I go on tour, like all of my like big songs I always play because I feel like it's so much fun being in the just in the audience and knowing a song, I think. Like so I'm like there's always those big ones, but when this tour happens, we're going to be starting the rollout for the next album. So I'm like, okay, do I play the old album? Do I play the new one? So we're trying to figure that out. I think of being able to do it. We might have different, like every night, we might have different songs, like maybe a surprise song for each city or
Mm.
something. So I'm trying to figure all of that out. My outfits are going to be, that's what I'm right now. I'm trying to bedazzle all of my outfits. So that's going to take a bit, but it's been fun. I think we're waiting. I think as soon as the Europe tour wraps up for Madison, I think we'll probably get a little more info on everything for the US since we're a few months out, and then we'll probably figure everything out.
Love that. That's exciting.
Speaking of your album, your newest album is called Cause of Death, right?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of go more into depth with it and maybe like talk about certain songs that are your favorite
Yeah.
or your favorite to write.
Of course. So yeah, this whole project, it was such an interesting experience for me because I started writing an album and I was in a relationship where I'm such a hopeless romantic. I think I'm gonna marry every single person I'm with. And if I don't, I'm like, what's the point? So I was head over heels in love with this guy, and he was just not a good boyfriend. Like, really, just like never bought me flowers, wouldn't write me letters, like all these things, like bare minimum, like would not do it. So I'm in this relationship, so in love, realizing this is not the right relationship for me. We go on a break, we get back together. It's like this whole thing. I realize all this stuff, and I'm writing this album in real time. So it was like such an honest, just experience. And 24 songs. I mean, it was a lot. And the end kind of, it's about falling in love and falling in love with yourself again. So Cause of Death, the name of it, actually, there was one night where I was with one of my friends and we were just writing, and it just poured out of me, and I was like, this whole album for me is symbolizes like the death of the version of myself that would ever put up with any of that, who would ever let someone treat me like that. So it was definitely a huge growing turning point for me. Love Letter is one of my favorite ones. I was like, it really started with the whole noodle community. My ex never wrote me love letters, so I decided to start writing love letters for the noodles, and I mean, literally, like, I have, making sure no addresses are on here. Like, I send like 30 out a week, and I send them, just like I do giveaways, and I send them out to noodles because I'm like, hey, we all deserve love letters. And I have little pen pals, like they'll write me back. It's so cute. So that was a huge one that I loved. Good Guys Don't Change, which is the intro track, I wrote with two of my friends at like 5 in the morning. We were so drunk at the piano, like just like, I think we literally started writing it at like 5 a.m. And I still have the voice memo, and we were just like, this is it. I was like, this is the intro of my album. Like, this is how the story starts. So that one's one of my favorites. Go Find Less, which was the title focus track. That is one of my favorite songs I've ever written. That was the first time that I was like, literally, I remember when I was recording the vocals, I was like hysterically crying. And I was like, how am I going to get through this? And, the first line is, when it comes to believing in us, I'm turning into an atheist. And it was like, if I'm too much, go find less. Because that was just this thing. I always felt like I wasn't good enough with my ex, or that, like, there was all these things that he wanted me to be in, and I couldn't. And I felt like I was doing so much. So I was like, you know what? Like, you don't deserve me. So if I'm too much, like, go find someone else that's not going to do all these things. And it was, yeah, hearing the whole project was just such a wild experience because it was just, I can't even explain it. Like, it's just being able to listen back. And I, even now, I'm like, I don't even know, who knows if he's heard it and what he would think, because I was so honest in writing it. And, the first song, and then the single Falling for Somebody, which was one of my favorite ones. I actually wrote that while we were still together, and I was like kind of realizing like, oh no, like I need to get out of this relationship really fast. And then it ended up coming out on his birthday. So it was like this whole thing, like completely by accident. And I was like, guys, this is so bad. But yeah, it was such a just experience for me to just learn about myself. And I think in relationships, like, it was just a big growing point for me to just look back and be like, okay, like, this is how we're feeling. We're not going to do this anymore. If anyone is making you that sad or making you feel not good enough, like, that's not how love is supposed to feel like. So I definitely made my expectations a lot higher of like what I deserve. And right after it, I feel like I found, the love of my life, and like, I've never been happier, treated better now. So I feel like I had to go through all of that and realize that to really just be ready for the right person. So
Right. I was going to ask. This happens a lot. It completely slips my mind.
that happens all the time, and then you just cannot remember.
I know. I'm like, what? Oh, have you ever like felt like a song was too personal and like you were kind of scared to put it out because of like fear of what people would say?
It's so weird because when it comes to that stuff, I do not care. Like, I
Yeah.
remember on business, I remember sitting on the couch, and I was looking at, we had just finished the first song, and me and the writer were looking at my calendar to book another session. And I remember I was looking through it, and I went to like the next month, and it was like, oh, 3-year anniversary, like with my ex. And we broke, and I was like, huh. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's why it's like opens up, like, we almost made it. Next week would be 3 years. It was on my calendar, but I unsaved it. Because I remember I deleted it, and that was just that's probably one of the most personal ones, and also Love Me Like That. But no, I think the way I look at it is I'm like, look, if something's that personal and I'm writing about it every single, so specifically about every single detail, it helps me. So it might as well help someone else out there. If it was something that really helped me get through whatever I'm going, I'm like, someone else needs to hear this. So like I never care about that. And I think the craziest thing is like even something with like unfinished business, like so specific down to like the day and the year. And people are like, this exact same thing happened to me. And I'm just like, that is so wild. Like we all are just out here living the same life. And I think being vulnerable with music and just being honest, maybe it comes back to like vlogging and showing just like all the parts of my life. It's never been something that worried me or been scared of. Like I'm just like, let's be more specific. Like when I'm writing for other artists, I'm like, tell me everything. I'm like, is this too specific? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, let's say this exactly how you said it, because that's what people need to hear. Like that's what's going to heal people, that's what's going to help people, and they're going to understand. Like I think with music, like you can really tell when something is just real and honest, and that's always the stuff that I feel like I gravitate towards more when I'm listening to music. And there's been songs that like other artists, like Julia Michaels is one of my favorite songwriters, but she'll write, a song and she will be so specific. And I'm like, okay, you're like that exact same thing happened to me. Um, so yeah, I always am all for just being as vulnerable and honest as possible.
I
Yeah.
think having that perspective also is going to get you really far because not a lot of people think that way. And I don't know, I think throughout the years of doing all of this, it's like
Mhm.
you develop that tough skin. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, good for you.
For
Yeah.
sure. And I think like something like along the lines of that just made me think of it. Like I remember when I first started like songwriting for other people, because I was doing it for myself just like my whole entire life. But I would go into sessions and there would be all these people, like usually like men, but like all these people, and they would just be like, oh, well, if you're writing a song, like you never want to be the one that's like hurt. You want the power. Like you don't want to be the one that's like getting hurt, or you don't want to be the one that's getting broken up with or like crying. And I remember I would just be like, well, I was like, I was hysterically crying and I didn't know what to do with my life. Like I got completely heartbroken, and that's what I'm going to say. I'm not going to,
Mhm.
you know, make it this pretty story all the time, because a lot of times it's not. And I think being able to write from that side, I have one song, Overrated. Like that was one of my things, because I remember I wrote it and I was so brutally honest. Like on the TikTok, I was like, a biggest thing. And it was very controversial for a lot of people, because I said, like, I think it was like, if you've ever started liking someone while you're in a relationship. And, for me, when I wrote that song, I was in this place where like I was in a very toxic relationship. It wasn't a good relationship. I've been through so many divorces. I would never cheat on someone in my life, but it's like, we're humans. Like there's been a thought before where you're with someone, you're like, oh, wow. And for me, I was like, wow, like if I'm even considering liking someone else, I need to get out of this relationship. Got out of it right away. But it's like, there's all these real experiences that I think people are so scared to talk about, because they're scared of people judging them or what people are going to say. But I'm like, if that happened, there's such a difference between acting on those kinds of thoughts and like having them, because we're all human. It happens to all of us. Like there's so many things. And so, I love just being able to be honest, because, that's a song that people, even that one, there were comments, and there were so many comments like, oh, you're supporting cheating. I'm like, I've never cheated on someone in my life. Never would. Like, that is so not what I'm saying. Like, listen to the song, because there's all the other comments that people were like, wow, like no one's ever said this side of the story. Like no one's ever been this honest about this. This is exactly what I'm feeling. And I think that for me is what I want to do the most, is be able to give people just that side of the story that no one wants to talk about, but is something that, maybe people are too embarrassed to admit, but it happens.
Yeah. And I think like what you were saying, like just being, I think relatability is something that like I look a lot like for in like artists. Whenever I listen to music, it's like always about the lyrics for me. So I think like
Same.
just being honest, like the best thing, because like I listen to music obviously that like I don't relate to, but the ones that like really stick with me are always the ones that I relate to.
100%. And I think that's why it's so funny. Like in this project that I'm working on right now, it's like we were trying to write fun songs, and I'm like such a ballad, like sad little girl. When I'm like writing, I'm like love my sad lyrics. And one of the writers, his name's Brandon, and he's one of the most talented people. Like I learned so much from him. But he was like, we need to have some fun. And I'm like, well, I'm not like that much of a party girl. Like, I don't know. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what am I gonna write about? Like dancing? I don't dance. Like, so it was just like this whole thing where I was like, you know what? Like, in order to for this project, I'm like, in order for me to really write this, like I have to go have these fun experiences. Like I have to go get drunk and dance all night at a bar so I can write the song because it has to be real or else it
Yeah.
will not happen. I can't do it. So life is just crazy, guys. It's such a wild ride, and I feel like we're all just figuring it out together.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
And it's crazy because we're also on two like completely different trajectories of our lives, but then we all share the same
Yeah,
pain.
where do you guys
So
live? Are you from where are you guys based in?
I'm in Ohio.
And I'm in Montreal.
Wow. Okay, so you guys don't even that's crazy. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know. It's so hard, like long distance friendships, but it
Oh, I know.
makes the time that we're together that much better. So
Do you guys see each other like often or at all like throughout?
we try to do different trips throughout the year, so like 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
That's great though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to go back and talk about your parents for a second.
Cool.
Because you did mention that your dad is doctor or surgeon, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm,
your mom is in the entertainment industry.
mhm,
Um, Having them being like so successful, do you
mhm.
think that like where they are in life helped you like connect to people more and like network? Or do you think it made it harder for you to like get further in your career because
Mhm.
I don't know, they kind of it was like harder for you to maybe separate yourself from them.
Yeah. I love that question. I mean, here's the thing. I think there's all connections are always going to be the biggest thing in life. And I think it's obviously having parents that have already been very successful 100% helps with that. You know, I think
Hmm.
all the things, me being able to have an education, all the stuff that I'm so grateful for. But I think growing up, it was also something that my parents, I feel like, with how successful they are, they're not like, I feel like normal parents within that sense where they were like, they both worked so hard and they're like you're not going to just get everything like you need to work hard so like from a very young age like I got my first job when I was like 14, 15. I was working in a smoothie shop like for a few years so like they really instilled that in me like you know I got my first car like I paid for all these things by myself and they just taught me they're like this is how you have to be and I think with that growing up in LA and being around so many people I think I was very insecure that I didn't want anyone to, because I know how hard I work. So I didn't want anyone else to think, oh, you're only making it because this is who your parents are. This is who that. So
Hmm.
I really separated myself. I mean, that's why I go by just Neriah. You know, I don't go by my last names, which 100% I could have. But I was like, you know what? And I told both my parents, even to this day, I'm like, I want to do this on my own. Like, I want to do this because I won't be able to live with myself if I don't. So I think there's definitely that. I think growing up, the biggest thing that I think I got out of it was, you know, growing up with my mom being in the entertainment industry. I think it just inspired me a lot because I would go to like events and at a young age or red carpets and I would see all these things and she didn't do music at all so it's a little bit different but it was just like I was like, hey, I would want to do this. Like this is really cool. And I think advice from my parents, like they definitely had a lot of people that they'd been around that was able to give advice. But at the end of the day, I think now I look at it, I'm like, you know, everyone is put on this earth for a certain reason. We don't get to pick where we come from. So it's like, you know, it was something that I learned. I was like, I know how hard I work. And like, if other people are going to say stuff, they can say what they want. Like, you know, I feel like once people get to know me and they know the whole story, like they do realize like what I have done. So I think it's great. I think having, you know, I think anyone can help you with anything. It's like networking is the most important thing. You can meet someone at a coffee shop and they could, you know, it just you never know these days. So I think being open to that and being able to collaborate and also just being able to ask for help and tell people like, hey, I do this. Like, do you do this? Like, what can we do together? It's like even stuff like this, like doing podcasts together. Like it's all just networking. That's what life is. And it's being able to like build these relationships. And I think, you know, collaborating is so important and growing together and like finding your group that, you know, you all love and support each other. Like there's so many people I feel like in my circle where I'm like, I want you to succeed, like, and I will do whatever I need to help you too. So it's like, I think it's just building this community again. It goes back to that of just like supporting each other and realizing that there's so much room for everyone. Like there's no need to have like there's so much room. And I think everyone can help each other with everything. And I think in this industry there's so much jealousy and competition. And it's like it doesn't have to be like that. Like there's room for everyone. And I think that's something that in LA like really will ruin friendships and all of these things. But I think my parents growing up the best thing that I got out of it was just the mindset that I kind of had. I mean, LA was really hard, especially, having friends that are famous and all of these things at such a young age. I was like, I don't care who you are. If you're not a good person and if you're not honest, because that's like my biggest value, I can't have you in my life. So just being able to like do that and realize like, hey, like, look past all of the clout chasing and all of that, because there's so much of that. And like the most important thing is just having genuine people that surround you.
Yeah, that's so true. And it seems like your parents did a very good job at raising you. Just like speaking with you for 40 minutes, you seem very like down to earth and very humble. So
thank you. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I mean, I have all my parents. They're incredible. Like they really did. And I think they just taught me like this is what you don't want to be like. This is what you want to do. You got to work hard. You have to do these things, and like you have to be grateful for all these things. And like also at a young age knowing how grateful I was to live the life I did, to go to college, to have an education, and I think all of that stuff I'm so grateful for, and it just really shaped me to be who I am. So they did a great job.
Mhm.
I love that. Going back to music, who would you say are three of your like musical inspirations at the moment?
Ooh, okay. Right now I love 1975. I love Julia Michaels, and who else have I been loving right now? Um, I'm trying to find like someone that like I feel like nobody would say because obviously there's like the Taylor Swifts and all of them. Who else have I been loving? Japanese House I've been obsessed with lately.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
So yeah, they're great.
Our last question that we like to ask every guest that we have on, because our podcast is called That's So Us. What's one thing that if someone saw, they would be like, that's so Neriah? Other than noodles,
Noodle.
because I feel like that one we would know.
Uh, Probably like bedazzles, like rhinestones.
I saw you. I was watching one of your lives the other. I think you were bedazzling sunglasses.
Oh yeah, these were probably the ones I was bedazzling. I'm crazy, guys. I bedazzle everything.
Oh, I love that.
They're so fun. Like my outfits for tour, like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be crazy. Like everything is gonna be bedazzled. But I love it. It's everything. I feel like people will send them. Like there was this video going viral of someone bedazzling their car, and I had like 100 of the noodles send it to me, and they were like, "Is this you?" I was like, "Don't give me any ideas."
It's so
That's
funny.
so funny.
Um,
Oh,
Thank you so much again for coming
yeah.
on.
Of
Um,
course. Thank you guys.
Before you go, talk about socials. Do you want to shout out all of your socials where people can find you, where they can listen to your music?
Sure. Okay. Just say it whenever.
Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Neriah, and you can find me at This Is Neriah on all socials and Neriah on all music platforms.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a lovely day.
You
You
too.
too.